Friday morning, May the 3rd, 2002, a team of archaeologists from Wessex Archaeology are digging here. There is a new housing development being built in Amesbury, so the statutory survey and excavations are being done. In fact, they're almost done when somebody shouted, "Gold!" This was a problem, albeit a nice problem to have, but a problem nonetheless. Now by this stage the team were well aware they had a Bronze Age burial on their hands. So it was clearly important, but gold? Friday was drawing to a close. They couldn't just leave the site. This was, simply put, the most important dig of their lives, each and every one of them. A site of such importance and historical value couldn't just be left over the weekend, could it? So they'd have to continue for as long as it took to excavate this site, this burial place, which would change our understanding of prehistory. Very early on in the excavation, it was clear this was a single burial and perhaps would fit into an era defined by the Bell Beaker culture or Bell Beaker period. A culture named after a very typical shaped beakers that the burial occupants were laid to rest with. A movement of people from mainland Europe appearing after 2500 BC in Britain. This would last over 400 years. It would sit strikingly between the end of the late Neolithic and the early Bronze Age. Prior to this, the landscape saw a very different way of dealing with the dead, marked significantly by the long barrows from West Kennet to Wayland Smithy and all in between, often sort of multiple use rather than single, and very often also not buried with a huge amount of items with them. The Bell Beaker grave was usually male, knees up alongside him with a small collection of goods, the Bell Beaker itself, maybe a flint arrowhead, and often with a barrow over the grave itself. Back here on site, May the 3rd, 2002. Now it's 5:30 in the evening and more archaeologists from Wessex Archaeology turn up because they get wind of the significance of this dig. So they come along to help, and we now have a partial uncovering of the top half of the body. Things are moving forward fast, but it's 5:30 and we only have 2.5 hours of daylight left. The man in this burial would become known as the Amesbury Archer. The wealth of finds found with him, not least gold ornaments, the oldest gold found in England, would really highlight his elevated position in society. This was the time that could well coincide with the positioning of the large megaliths at Stonehenge. Ultimately, we would learn that this man travelled from somewhere between the Alps of Switzerland and southern Germany, where he grew up. He would travel over 600 miles on foot to reach these islands. Now the finds with this man suggested he had such a knowledge of metalworking. Now this period in time right here suggested there was a huge change from the Neolithic, the Stone Age, to the Bronze Age and the metalworking. Could this man of such stature in his community have been some kind of marker for that change? And if so, what relation does that have to the construction of the megaliths at Stonehenge? "6:30 PM and now a number of arrowheads have started to become uncovered from this grave. A number of arrowheads, as the lower half of his body is revealed. This was just a start though, as they would excavate more, as they began to unearth all of the body. The significance of the finds would be something that the world would talk about. One man buried with so many objects that would have been entirely useful to anyone still alive. That speaks volumes in itself. Now the fact that the burial site back there at the road and the companion just 4 metres away but excavated at all were perhaps more luck than judgment. You see, The order of the day was supposed to be a Romano-British feature or two, some cemeteries at the school field just there. Now, once they were found and identified, well, they didn't necessarily need to be excavated there and then. Part of the school field contained such a cemetery. Once identified, a drainage system could be rerouted around it and the site preserved, perhaps for an excavation another day. But the two graves, 1289 and 1236, the archer and the companion, well, they lay in a position where the road was set to be. The road couldn't be diverted and they would need to be excavated. Now you may be wondering why I'm walking around a rather random wood. Well, this is the West Woods, 15 miles north of Stonehenge, and plays a huge part in the story of Stonehenge and perhaps even the story today of the Amesbury Archer. You see, just a few years ago, a team from Brighton University did a random array of geochemistry on all kinds of sarcens throughout the country in the south of England, and they came up with the analysis that this wood here was the spot that the megaliths came from for Stonehenge. The 52 huge sarcens were all quarried from here, not 2 miles that way, not 2 miles that way, but here in the West Woods, transported south across Salisbury Plain, and now we have the burial of the archer. This metalworker being uncovered just a mile or so from Stonehenge, highly likely at a very similar time to when the stones were being raised. It's now 7 PM and the team stop and down tools. They need to meet and decide exactly what to do. They've only got 45 minutes of light left, so they come up with two options. Number one is to leave the site for the weekend, maybe cover it with some wooden planks, maybe hire some security. And remember, this isn't a hobby, this is a business. People have got lives, they're paid staff. Option two, carry on working until the job is done. The concern is it's bank holiday weekend, the sun is out and the area is popular for walkers and recreation and such. The locals had already got wind of the word gold. Indeed, you should always believe in yourself, and this team did. They all understood the importance of the time and this, discovering what it could mean, so they all carried on working well into the night. The list of goods that would ultimately be drawn up from the grave of the archer was staggering. Nothing like this had ever been seen before. 15 arrowheads perfectly crafted and made, maybe not even used. 122 pieces of worked flint for various purposes. 8 antlers and tusks, including spatulas for arrowhead working and a pin. 2 gold basket ornaments, 3 copper knives or daggers, 5 bell beakers, a belt ring, perforated oyster shell, another belt ring, a stone wrist guard, and 4 other stones including a cushion stone, 2 braces and an iron pyrite nodule. This was a huge list, one you wouldn't expect to find with someone, whatever their trade, certainly befitting of maybe even a king. So could he have been an archer, a metal worker, a flint worker, or all of those things and more? It's now 8:30 in the evening and the light on the Stonehenge landscape has completely gone. So the team get a minibus, 2 of their cars to light up the general area. And of course torches are now used for the intricate work on the actual burial itself. There was something else though, something else that would stand out from all of these artefacts and goods that were found with him. Something that would really make his mark on the landscape even more prominent if it was needed. You see that 600-mile journey that we talked about that he made those many years before? Well, he may have done that with no left kneecap. And here's what I'm here for today. One of the sarcens that remain in the West Woods. Absolutely gorgeous. Analysis of the bone structure would allow us to see that his injury or deformity had occurred some time before his death. The bone length in his left leg was more like 3% shorter and the density was greatly reduced. The kneecap wasn't just missing from the grave, the kneecap had been missing for a significant part of his life. But of course there was another significant injury. That was an abscess in his jaw. king or not, of huge significance, of course. Whatever we will learn from him, it's difficult not to see him as a symbol of this change in technology. The chances of this being one human being that brought about this significant change in era from the Neolithic to the Bronze Age are obviously very close to zero, but imagine for a moment that he was, and this one person could bring about this technology to this landscape that swept across Europe. The Amesbury Archer was part of a general movement of people westward in mainland Europe. Movement and then settle, and then movement and settle. An arm of that clearly ended up in Britain. The Amesbury Archer himself played a huge part in this. His journey effectively over 600 miles, potentially with one leg in use. Now we know his birthplace or area because of the oxygen isotopes. Now the analyses were from his dental records. In fact, soon after the excavations, the early analysis allowed the team to see how important this was. The style of burial and finds had definitely alluded to this, but confirmation that this man had travelled so far from the Alps effectively gave us scientific grounding of those theories. He was one of over 30 burials of this nature, and not quite with the significance of the finds that he had with him, but nevertheless they all illustrated this step movement of the Beaker people across Europe to where they settled here. Now the companion's grave, in fact just 4 metres away. DNA suggested that he was younger, maybe early 20s, and of close but not immediate relation. No huge amounts of finds were with him, but he did have some gold lodged in his jaw. So important, yes. Related, yes. This man, however, likely grew up in southern Britain, part of the family indeed of the Archer. Perhaps this shows us that the Archer himself came here with that tribe or group of people when he himself was in his early 20s. And whatever their relation, well, I guess we will never really know the true relation between his arrival here, the significance of all the finds that were found with him, and Stonehenge and its construction. Was there a relationship between those new technologies and its construction and the change from the Neolithic to the Bronze Age? Now the change in era from the Neolithic to the Bronze Age is often thought as a fairly long period of time, perhaps centuries, but maybe, just maybe, this one man and his family, his tribe, well, perhaps they brought about in a generation or two the internet of today. Now for the team that did this dig, well, they were told unequivocally this would be the pinnacle of their careers. Whatever age they were, they would never do another dig like this. And yet just 2 years later we have the Boscombe Bowmen. A story for another day. If you like your prehistory, well, you need to go and watch this video just here on the day Silbury Hill collapsed.